You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hey guys, and before I forget, I want to wish you all the happiest of New Year's. I don't know about you, but 2025 has gone so quickly for me that I keep thinking I'm in 2024. The fact that this episode of the Mighty Blue podcast is being released in 2026 just blows my mind. Anyway, Happy New Year to you all, even though I think I've missed out on 2025. My 2026 is going to be marked with another run at the Appalachian Trail, so I'm grateful to have that to look forward to. And in fact, if I should be lucky enough to finish the AT this year, it will happen almost exactly on the 10th anniversary of the first Mighty Blue show back in September 2016. I actually only realised that this morning, and I think that's got some good karma about it, so fingers crossed for a successful completion. As we did last week for Christmas Day, it's just the main guest and the accountability blog today. I have reconnected with Zen Bivy and Nemo, and in fact I've set the recording with Zen Bivy for next week, so it will be in next week's show. After that and the Nemo interview, I'll have worked out most of the new gear that I want, so we'll then move on to the Hike the Good Hike cohort of hikers for this year, starting in, I'd say, 2 weeks' time. These interviews have been very moving at times, and I've been grateful to the participants for their willingness to share their thoughts with me. With so many different trails represented, I think you're going to enjoy meeting this disparate group of hikers in 2026. Our main guest today is a fascinating bloke, Dr Rob Scanlon. Rob is a board-certified physician in practice for over 20 years. He's written a book about and called Surviving the Trail, 5 Essential Skills to Prepare Every Hiker for Adventure's Most Common Perils. It's a well-researched book with plenty of anecdotes illustrating Rob's points, and it is one that we can all learn from. I invited Rob on the show to go through those 5 essential skills, and we did it some justice, I thought. I hope you do too. I certainly learned that I didn't know as much as I thought I did, so I took something from it. Rob will be on shortly. Then what I thought would be a minimal accountability blog, because there hasn't been too much new this week, but I realised I had more to say than I thought I did. So let's get to it and meet Dr Rob Scanlon. Here he is. Our guest today is Rob Scanlon, and he's written an interesting book that I'd like to bring to your attention. It's called Surviving the Trail and talks about 5 essential skills that hikers need to know about. Hey, Rob, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on, Steve.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and being a doctor, I'm sure that you've got a bit of a head start on knowing most of the things in your day-to-day work. But how did you come to hiking in the first place, and what was your light bulb moment when you realised that these 5 issues, I suppose, were causing most problems for hikers?
So I actually started in the outdoors when I was a younger kid in the Scouts, but I hadn't, off to working hard in high school and then in college and in med school and in residency, et cetera, that sort of escaped me. But when I started to go back in practice in 2002, there was a hiking group at my hospital, and we used to meet outside of a state park in New York State, Harriman State Park, for those
Remember
of
it
you,
well. The AT goes. I'll be going through it next year. The AT goes through it.
Yes, absolutely. We used to meet in the Dunkin' Donuts in Sloatsburg every Saturday morning, and just, some docs, some nurses, and other ancillary staff, whoever's interested, and we went. Right. And so that really got me back on the trails, and really, I had gained a much better appreciation for it than when I was a kid, and it was really more blowing off of steam, trying to do something different than we were doing Monday to Friday, and then it started from there. To answer you the follow-up question you'd asked, at first it was really just more relaxation and, enjoying the outdoors, enjoying the company. And the more I got into it, the more I really had to kind of look inside and see, all right, if I ever go hiking on my own, and which I had at the time, I really got to make sure, I want to do all the things that I can to get home and not fall into whatever traps are out there. And it was an article in 2008 that I read that really raised my antenna to what's happening. At this time, the internet was just coming into its own, and you were just able to start seeing news feeds and things like that.
Sure.
And so this article was called "A Dozen Ways to Die," and it really really raised my antenna to the handful of things that both trap many hikers every week and are entirely preventable. And so with that in mind, the more news articles I would see come across my phone screen, the more I would see these same themes happening again and again and again and again.
Well, I'll tell you, what was startling to me, and you kindly sent me a copy of the book, which only arrived a couple of days ago, and I've dipped into it a little bit. It's quite, what's the word for it? It's quite intense. There's a lot of stuff in there. So
yes.
It is, I don't think it's something you can really read in one sitting, because it's quite longish anyway, and there's lots of different detail on each of those issues, which I'm going to come to in a second. But It starts out with kind of staggering statistics. I don't know whether you remember them, but it says, well, if you remember, you tell me, how many people die a week hiking?
So in the average week in North America, and that's US and Canada, more than 10 hikers die and more than 200 need rescue.
Don't you think that's remarkable?
It's likely an underestimate.
And the math's pretty easy. 500 dead a year and 10,000 rescues, which to me, it was staggering to me to read that. So, so let's kind of go through them one by one. Let's start with hydration, which I know is an important thing. And I must say, and I put my hand up straight away, I don't think I do hydration as well as I should. And I think I'm not alone in that, clearly. How do heat, altitude, pack weight, and all the various different things we have on a hike change hydration needs in ways that hikers often miss?
Yeah, so basically, the harder we work, the more water we consume. Our body needs it to lubricate the joints and work the muscles, and the muscles cannot function without water, but they use water up to generate the power that we demand of them. So yeah, the heavier the pack, the higher the elevation gain, the harder we're working, and faster we're going, the more water we're using up. And so that's something to kind of take the concept of. As far as altitude goes, there's a very short-term issue with hydration, but it does not matter for day hikes, even short backpacking trips. To gain a lot of altitude in a short period of time, it has a relatively negligible effect on hydration needs. But the weather. So as you might imagine, the hotter it is, the more we sweat, and therefore the more water we lose, and the lower the humidity, the more water we lose through respiratory droplets. Every time we breathe out, there are water droplets. And so the body needs to keep the airways moist. If they dry out, then we're going to get all kinds of mucus and everything else just sticking like glue to the bronchial walls.
And so do we lose water? Would I lose water at the same rate as you?
Yes. As long as respiratory rate and volume and the humidity stays the same, then yes. So generally 2 people, men versus women, large versus small, generally speaking, it's about roughly equal. And in an average day, in average conditions, we lose maybe about a quarter of a cup of water, in an average day or so. But add lower humidity, exercise, increased respiratory rate. Now we're losing a ton of water through respiratory droplets simply because the water now has to donate water from within to lubricate those bronchioles.
Sure.
And as opposed to in higher humidity environments, the body has to, just kind of sit back and monitor. And so we're losing a ton. If we were to do the same hike between, let's say, the Southeast U.S. and the Southwest, you're losing a lot more water with the same general hike.
I'm sure.
Between the two in the Southwest.
This is the one that worries me more than any other, actually, to be honest with you. I went in my 2014 through hike. I went I had 9 litres of water. I drank 9 litres of water and didn't pee for 27 hours. Which,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I was losing a lot of water. So when you hike, if you go into Harriman, if you go for an overnight, say a weekend hike, how much do you take? How much water do you carry with you a day?
Right. So the answer is it depends.
Of course it does.
And so
You're not a lawyer, are you? Oh, you're a doctor.
No. So the hiker speed, again, harder we're working. So the hiker, so the higher the speed, the higher the elevation gain, the higher the ambient temperature, and the lower the humidity. So all make a difference as far as how much you need. And as you probably saw in the book, because it varies between these variables, there is a table in there. It's the first time, first thing I've ever seen. And so I wanted to create a way for us to actually get out there knowing at least how much water we should have. Under average conditions, average hiking speed, which is about 2 miles an hour or so, 2 to 2.
Yours might be, mate. Mine's not.
Then we probably need about 500 cc or half a liter per hour of hiking. And how many hours is that? Well, it depends on your, so if again, you're going to do the 2 miles an hour and you got an 8-mile hike, then that's going to be 4 hours. So for that hike, you'd want to consume about 2 liters.
Well, I'm going next year on a through hike, and that's 8, 9, 10, 12-hour days sometimes. And I must admit, I tend to only carry 1 litre of water at a time, but I stop to drink water and fill up. Whenever I can fill up, I stop. Take my pack off, I drink a litre of water, and then I draw another litre of water to carry. So I effectively take 2 litres of water at a time because I'm carrying one inside me. That's something I was taught the first time I went, but I'm not sure because there are times on the AT, especially in the summer, when the water sources dry out. How much do you tend to carry?
It all depends. But if I'm going to be, let's say I'm going to be in the Southwest and I'm going to be doing a 8-10 mile hike.
Yeah.
I will bring at least 3 liters on me from the trailhead. Right. And that's heavy. But guess what? You're not going to run across many water sources along the way.
Yeah. I'm going to have to make and I'm making this about me because I am going next year, but it's a really important thing to me. And I'm going to make sure I handle my water better than I did last time. What about electrolytes? Can you put too much in your water, or is it something you should put in every time you use your water?
Yeah, you can overdo it. I tend to go every other liter.
Right.
I will drop in a tablet or something like that, or 2, depending on how much I'm sweating. If it's hotter, then I might do 2 tablets per liter, every other liter.
And in fact, then I said, can you have too many electrolytes? Can you have too much water?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you don't want to. So talk me about that. Talk to me about that then.
So the table tells you generally how much you should have, but we should generally drink to thirst and know when you're thirsty. A lot of people blow off a dry mouth and everything else, but that's the first obvious sign that we should take a drink. But you should sip something every 15 minutes. But if you are anything but thirsty, then just wait. Don't force the water. We see it a lot in the ultra marathon community where they're working hard, they're working a lot, and they're drinking a ton of plain water, and that's the key element there. And what they're doing is they're ingesting electrolyte-free water, and that water dilutes down the sodium in their bloodstream. Right. And it's called exercise-induced hyponatremia. When you do that, then you get extreme brain swelling.
Oh my God!
And yes. So
I can't afford that.
so literally, you can say too much of anything can kill you, even water. But so a person who might just not even exercise and they just drink gallons and gallons of water, they will die.
So if you're as a hiker, then what are the early signs that you actually are dehydrated?
Yeah. So first things you want to look for is you're not performing as well. number one. Your muscles are just not, you're like, I don't know, I'm slowing down, I'm just not getting, not performing right. I'm not doing quite as well physically. The next sign we would look for is mentally, you're maybe a little irritable, maybe a little bit kind of low in mood, some sort of change. Those are very subtle signs. It only takes 2% water loss to become mildly dehydrated.
Good Lord.
So there's not a lot of room for error.
You're right. We're on the edge all the time there, effectively.
Absolutely. I think, the majority of us have, or at least mildly dehydrated a lot. And people will make it back to their cars and they'll just down, whatever, and they'll make up for it. And we somehow get through it. But you don't really start going downhill until you're moderate. When you really start slowing down, your brain starts dysfunctioning and you're not thinking clearly and this and that and the other.
So if a hiker had, I'm sticking with hydration longer than I should do actually, but I want to get it right in my mind. If a hiker,
it's one of the most important things we have to do. So yeah, it deserves the time.
And if a hiker had to simplify their hydration strategy to one rule that they'd actually follow, what should it be? Is there something you would think, well, do this and you should be okay?
That's a hard one.
Because it depends. It depends. Yeah, apart from read the book. Yeah,
read the book. But you did mention it along the way. Yeah. So people who are through hiking or backpacking, one rule I don't want anyone to discount is never ever ever squander the opportunity to fill up your water bottles when you encounter water source in the environment.
Yeah.
Even though you might have brought enough for you for the anticipated hike, you don't know what's going to happen.
No.
You don't know what you're going to need later. Always have as much water as you can on you. But then if you're collecting from the environment, I don't know how you do this, but you should treat it, purify it, sterilize it, etc.
I filter it. That's basically all I do with it. But I tend to, if I'm going to go to a water source, whether I need it or not, I will sit down and get some water and drink it. And then I'll fill up again. So at least I've got some all the time. So that's hydration. Let's talk about weather and managing body temperature. Because I know that, once again, it's a thing I think about quite often. Because I know that both hypothermia and heat illness both sneak up on hikers, don't they? Why are they so often misjudged? And what are the signs of both?
Yeah, and actually it's a lot of the same signs. So when we're getting overheated, start to sweat a lot more because the body's now like, oh crap, we got to really dump heat. So it tries to sweat as one of the mechanisms to dump heat. Certainly mouth dry, but again, you're not as performing as well, and you're not thinking as clearly when you're heating up, because the brain needs our body needs to be at 98.6 or thereabouts to function properly. And just like, let's say, a high fever, people will get giddy. They'll get, they'll pass out. Some people seize, children seize with high temperatures because it's affecting the brain so much. And so that's kind of what we approach as our body temperature is rising. And why it sneaks up on us, I think most of us are, I think because people don't quite know how much water to bring, how to hydrate. And, 30% of us walk around every single day in our normal lives underhydrated. And so it's a chronic issue for many people, myself included. I until I really worked out this table, I was like, oh my God, I'm really, what am I doing to myself? And so it's not that I know it all. I've done all the research and I've figured it all out kind of for me, but also to help others.
There's a heck of a lot of science in the book. I mean, and so you've got to have your thinking cap on when you actually read this book as well, to realise what's being said to you as well. And
right. There's absolutely no fluff. It's dense with information. Yeah.
And I'll be starting me again near mid-March. So I'm going to have it cold in the beginning, but I'm pretty confident about my layering system in the beginning. But it's the summer heat that I expect will give me the most difficulty. I remember going up a mountain somewhere, Pennsylvania possibly, and it was 98 degrees at the top of the mountain. and I could hear what I thought was something running up behind me. I thought it was a bear, so I turned around quickly. There was nothing. It was my heart beating. I could hit. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it. Yeah. So I know this stuff. I've experienced this stuff. So how do you cope with summer heat? That's the one that really worries me.
Yeah. So one, certainly the hydration part, and hydrate well, and hydrate before you go walking, and
Of course.
and so make sure you're tanked up beforehand. And so the one big thing is, find ways to, and so the mechanisms of body heat gain and loss are explained in the book. So we use those principles to our advantage and know to avoid the things that we gain heat by. So we want to avoid as much as possible the radiant heat from the sun. So finding any semblance of shade along the way to take a drink, to take a break, whatever. But the temperature is noticeably lower in the shade as opposed to in the sun.
You say that, and I'm sure you're technically correct. But I know that certainly we often refer to the Appalachian Trail. This is my area more than anything else. That as a green tunnel, and it's quite dense. And quite often, the warmth inside that density underneath the leaves is quite really hot. In fact, sometimes.
Perhaps a lot more humid than
that's right. That's probably what it is. Yeah, it's humidity aspect.
And then certainly light colored clothing. So you don't want to wear dark colors. So you would again absorb the radiant heat from the sun, and you're heating up your skin. You want to wear clothing that allows you to wick away from the skin and shed that heat. And you want to actually decrease your hiking pace. Now, really drop your hiking pace, and you're out there exposed to heat more. So you want to at least drop it a little bit, so you're not working quite as hard. You're not adding heat, through the muscle usage, and so you're creating less heat. You want to absorb less heat. You want to expose yourself to less heat if you can, if you're not in these areas that are still hot in the shade.
So one of the things that I certainly, you learn a lot of stuff when you are hiking. And over the years, I've been doing more and more hiking, obviously. Should hikers think differently about layering when they stop versus when they're moving? Because when you've been hot all day and or it may even be cold outside, you cool down incredibly quickly, especially when you've got sweat inside you, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking heat environments?
I mean, clothes layering. You've got different layers of clothing and that. Should you, if you're really hot, strip off, or if you're really cold, put everything on?
Yeah, and that will differ. But yes, absolutely. And it should go very, very minimalistic on top in the heat. I usually wear long sleeves. And sort of like a polyester blend that wicks away, but a light color so that it deflects the radiant heat of the sun.
Sure.
And so when I'm stopped, and I try to find a shade to stop in, most of the time that being colder than out in the sun, then that just allows that wicking to continue. But allows that to cool the skin as much as possible. So I don't really, for me, I don't change anything about my clothing in the hot, but certainly in the cold. And I'll give you an anecdote. I went snowshoeing in Idaho a few winters back, and so I brought my base, a mid, a fleece, and a shell.
Yeah.
And so I started out in all of it, and I didn't get, a quarter mile, and you're burning a ton of calories doing snowshoeing, as you know. And so everything came off except my base and my mid, and I was out there. It's freezing cold. It's snowing actively, but I don't have my shell. I don't have my fleece on. They're both in my pack, and I'm just hotter. I'm as hot as it was in the summer. And I'm feeling fine. And then I stop to take a drink or to eat or something like that. Because you really have to keep up your calories when you're snowshoeing. And boy, you gotta open up that pack and put those layers on because you're gonna now you've stopped generating that heat.
Oh, yeah.
And now the cold's going to get you. And so layering in the cold is really an art. And the biggest thing to focus on in the cold is you want to layer just enough so that you are comfortably cold.
Yes.
And so
I try to start every morning comfortably cold, yeah. Even slightly uncomfortably cold. But if I'm going if I'm going uphill, I know I'm going to be warm very shortly.
Right. And so the worst thing we can do is keep bundled up, stay hot, and sweat. And when you sweat, you, no matter what you got on, it's not going to wick it enough away from your skin. You're going to freeze once that temperature gets to that sweat. And so if you feel like you're warm, take a layer off, open a layer off. But as soon as you stop to eat or whatever, unless it's for a few seconds, bundle back up for that short period of time. So you maintain what you've created in the inside, and then take it all off for when you go back out.
And I don't think I've ever been in a bad storm in the West. I've been in plenty of bad storms in the East. If a storm rolls in, what do you do as a hiker?
Snowstorm?
Any storms, thunder and lightning and snow, any of those things.
Yeah. So, thunder and lightning, that's a rough one. It depends, do you have a canopy overhead? Is it,
they're called trees.
Right. Well, out west is not likely to be, not much of a canopy. Yeah. So, as we know, we heard, was it late summer, early fall, there's two hunters out in Colorado. They got caught in a storm, and they went under a tree to get shelter from the downpour, and they both got hit with the lightning. And so for that, definitely stay away from anything that will serve as a lightning rod, especially if you've got the one tree out there. So the electricity is going to want to go to that path of least resistance. For the rain, if you've been fortunate enough to know the weather ahead of time and you brought your rain gear, of course, it goes without saying, put it on. As far as snowstorms go, and so we're skipping ahead a few chapters though, but this new snow on the ground is likely to cover the trail and everything else that you might mistake for the trail. Sure. So people are likely to get lost as hell in new snow if they keep on forging ahead. And even if they've been on the trail before, everything looks different when it's all in white. And so all your little cues, all the visual cues that you're used to seeing without snow on the ground are gone. They're lost.
But in many ways, though, Rob, I think you'll agree. And we're going to talk about navigation in a minute. But in many ways, far out, the GPS navigation is where that scores really well here, because you can see when you're off trail pretty much straight away. In fact, I believe you can put it so it signals you when you're going off trail as well.
That's great. Yeah, electronic navigation has come a long way, I have to say.
Yeah. So crossing waterways was a bit of a surprise for me, although I'd imagine most of the problems are in the snowmelt, I guess, in the West when the rivers really take off. How do you frame that issue? I mean, how do you bring that up in the book? I didn't read enough about it in the book there.
Well, just that you wouldn't expect it, but drowning in the backcountry is actually one of the more common causes of death. Wow. One of the more common causes of death. And yes, you are absolutely right. It happens way more in the western United States than in the eastern, simply because of the downhill snow melt.
Sure.
And the book goes over all the signs of, what is water that you can safely cross, how you cross, how to look for the best spot to cross in, or even timing, and to really look at it as water's our friend. Water's, we drink it, we play in it, whatever, but it will kill you. And having that, it's amazing. The hydraulic force will turn over boulders and trees, or logs, whatever, in the water. Certainly, will topple a human being in no time.
Well, certainly creek crossings, where we come across creeks and so on, they look simple until they aren't.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you have to be careful. And I know I was looking through your best strategy for crossing any body of water. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So first of all, the deeper it is, the more buoyant we are. So you might be 150, 200, whatever pounds, but you become weightless once it becomes deep enough. And I usually use the knees as the indicator above which you're getting much more buoyant,
Hmm.
and below which is kind of a safer depth. But sometimes it's difficult to
That's right.
judge the depth
Yeah.
from the bank, as best as you can try. But certainly, if you're going and you're like mid thigh, get back to don't keep going, and it all depends. Um, so on straightaways, the deepest part of the creek or river is the center. But on the curved bends of the river, the deepest part is on the outside curve.
Oh, how
You know,
interesting. I didn't know that at
yeah,
all.
yeah. So
That makes sense,
the
actually. Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
right. So the inside curve is the most shallow
Right.
spot.
Okay.
So it depends on if you're coming across a deeper spot in a straightaway and you're in the middle, then chances are you keep on going to the opposite bank. It's going to get more shallow.
Yeah.
And another anecdote: I was backpacking with two friends in Banff. Actually, the cover picture of the book is from that
That's
trip.
beautiful. That's
So
beautiful.
I'm the last guy taking a picture of my two buddies in
Right.
front of me with that backdrop in the distance. It was just an amazing view
Yeah.
to the eye. I was like, I got to capture this,
Yes.
and then I just the publisher said, send us some pictures, and they were like, oh my god, we love this. But anyway, so we were crossing in every waterway, every little like sliver of water that was coming downhill always had a path over that you could walk on a log or this, that, and the other thing. And except for the big river that we passed, we camped overnight. And it was next to a river, and then there was a bridge across, and then but the trail went, perpendicular to the river downstream.
Right.
And we're like, wow, what is this crazy? There's like a bridge over like a tiny little like nothing, and this thing's got zero. Like we're gonna die. And it was a bend, and so the first two guys went first, and I was putting on my water shoes. I was doing all my things, and they were like, yeah, screw that, and they just went ahead. They made it, and so I'm going across in my the way I describe in the book, and I'm up to my groin in water,
Oh, that's so good.
and I hadn't gotten to the opposite bank yet, and the bottom is all cobble, and it's all like crumbling under your feet and everything else, and slippery. And I was like, oh my god, this is treacherous. But I got across, but that was definitely, and there was no spot at all. That was a good alternative to where we were.
Well, from what I saw this morning, though, didn't you say that you, if you can, get across together in a team, as it were? So you ignored that.
No, they ignored.
Oh, right,
that.
they ignored that. Okay.
They were bigger than that.
All right.
Like, okay,
All right. Okay.
Whatever.
Okay.
But yes, absolutely.
Talk about that. Then, what's the best strategy for crossing a body of water? Because it makes sense what I read.
Right. So if there's a group of you, even two of you, then you should go together. Mostly, in single file with the heaviest, bulkiest person up front, and everyone behind, supporting the person in front of them.
Sure.
And the person in front using their walking stick or a trekking pole or whatever they have to lean forward on as they're going. And everybody's just taking in unison, taking one step closer toward the opposite bank. Everybody just kind of working as a team. So you break down so everyone holding each other up, and in single file, everyone's hydraulic effect that the water's having on them is mitigated significantly.
Huh.
And so if you have a large group, you can also opt for an arrowhead, again, with the heaviest, bulkiest, strongest person in the front at the tip of the spear, if you will.
The sacrifice, you mean?
Right, exactly. And everybody kind of hold it with one free arm on their shoulder, and so on and so forth behind in the arrowhead. And any younger or lesser strong people, they're in the middle of that V, if you will. And so you're always heading, facing upstream. So the water's coming at you. And leaning into it. And so, but on the inside of that V that's going, sideways through the water, you're really protecting, because you're diverting all of that water energy away from the inside of them.
So it makes sense really then, Rob, to tell people that if they think it's a bit sketchy they're crossing, especially on a trail as popular as the Appalachian Trail, there's always someone coming along in a minute, probably as well to wait for somebody to cross with, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
We now move on to the awareness of heights and falling. I fall all the time on trail. I fell 46 times my first 80 through hike and 44 times my second 80 through hike. So I'm going to go through the 100 mark very shortly. What do we need to be paying attention to? I remember this a few times. It was normally towards the end of the day. I was getting a bit tired and so on. What do you pay attention to?
Yeah, we're all going to fall. There's, find a perfect, flat, groomed
I can fall there.
trail.
I can fall there.
And I'll give you my 401k. But, there's always trees, like tree roots and rocks and, irregularities and step ups, step downs and everything. So we're definitely going to fall. We're not used to walking around in heavier boots and this and that and the other thing.
Sure.
So it is natural to fall. We generally, but in general, we fall more on downhills than on uphills, and there are some risk factors. Being a tiny bit older, a tiny bit heavier, and
both of those things, and not tiny bit either.
and certainly, certainly at the end of the day, when we're not feeling quite as strong, our legs aren't quite as strong. We may not lift our feet up as much over those little obstacles that are constantly on the trails. And one thing I do hate about hiking is there's so many beautiful things to look out at, but in order to not fall, you got to be looking down all the time.
Right.
And that's the one thing I'm frustrated with hiking. I'm missing so much because I'm just out for
It's a case really of continuing to pay attention all day long, and it is tougher at the end of the day. There's no doubt about it. It probably gives you an indication it's time to stop at some stage in the near future, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I will never hike without trekking poles, and they clearly help me anyway. Do you think they sometimes create a false sense of security, or do you always hike with trekking poles?
I actually very rarely use trekking poles.
Oh, right.
I think it might be a matter of pride, and so something I've
got none.
Yes, something I have to swallow eventually. But I did use them when I did Kilimanjaro. I definitely needed those. I had COVID at the time. I was definitely not my strongest. And my training for being a flatlander was just not as good as people who live in amongst the mountains and they can hike all the time on hills. So I was at a disadvantage there. So the trekking poles did help me quite a bit. But no, they do help. They absolutely do help. They help save your legs, basically. And for especially those long days on trail, like you're doing on the AT. Then you're going to need every bit of what they can save you. But as far as fatal falls, and so that's a whole other category of falling. And again, falling being, so these major issues that I covered with these chapters in the book really cover the handful of things that are always in these news headlines and always talked about in this light, what we can do for ourselves. But the fatal falls generally are people taking selfies and doing stupid things where gravity is the enemy of life.
Yes.
And so it doesn't take long. It's not a 400-foot fall only that will kill you. A 20-foot fall, so 20 feet of falling, which is a long way, especially if your head is starting out, 6 feet above that.
That's right.
So.
Yeah.
But 20 feet of falling is the threshold where, at and above that level of height of falling, you are, when you're gotten by your rescuers, you were brought to a major trauma center because that pelvic fractures and spinal fractures and femur fractures, hip fractures, all that stuff are much, much, much higher beyond that level. So it's not a lot of, not a lot of height. So how do we prevent that kind of falling? So we avoid going off trail as much as possible. I mean, we all got to stop to pee and other bio breaks, certainly. But going far off trail where there's the topography that you're likely to encounter these bigger falls is one of the biggest risk factors, actually. Going, and then deliberately going beyond like safety fencing and other barriers that are trying to prevent you from falling. Certainly that's another whole other risk factor. We didn't mention, but in each chapter starts off with 4 scenarios of real hikers who've had real circumstances, and the circumstances I outlined in the falling chapter are all people who really just did silly things they should not have done.
Or as you said to me in our conversation, don't do dumb shit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. By the way, I don't want anybody to think this is a book trying to put anybody off hiking. It's a book trying to encourage people to hike, but think about what they're doing when they're hiking. And talking of which, now we move on to the last one, which is navigation. And I mentioned GPS systems before. I would have thought there must have been an improvement in terms of people getting lost, isn't there? That people have now got these systems and they can show literally when they're off course.
Yes. Now, so yes and no. So the incidence of lost hikers is at the same rate it's always been.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Now, number one, the outdoors is where batteries go to die, and so. So it only, so if you're going to depend on electronic navigation, then always have a backup. It's sort of like your hydration, bring more than you need because you never know. And so bring more battery than you need. So if you have a battery bank, that will withstand the outdoors, bring it. If you're going to be in cold weather, these lithium ion batteries will drain faster just in the ambient temperature than they would in warmer temperatures. So you'll run out of battery life then. But phones get dropped in the streams or against rock or down a ravine or what have you.
Sure.
The screens get smashed, and then what do you got?
You haven't got much.
Right. And usually people are looking intermittently, and like you said, there are there's some that will have alarms for when you are off trail that it will buzz in your pocket or something like that, and so that's a good feature because we're not constantly if you have it constantly on, then you're definitely going to run out of battery life. But if you have a plan A, if your plan A is your electronic navigation, then always have a plan B. Have an analog backup. Again. You never know. The state, so I'm happy to talk about the statistics. Oregon is, or I should say Oregon,
okay,
is pretty much the only state that had open source information as far as their search and rescue operations go. And they collected data for about 10 years. And they experienced about 350 lost hikers every single year.
Good Lord.
So about one a day, but they have a much narrower hiking season because of the weather out there. So probably more than one day in the peak of the season.
What do you think? And I was thinking about this morning. So I got lost when I was hiking in a group hike, and I had nothing. I had no idea where I was because it was a group hike. I was following somebody, and suddenly there was no one there. What's the most dangerous moment in a navigation mistake? Is it the moment you get lost, or is it the realization that you're lost? Because for me, I almost had a heart attack when I realized I was lost.
Sure. So actually, it's what you do after you realize you've gotten lost. So panicking is probably the worst thing you can do.
Sure.
And running off in any different direction is probably even worse because you're probably not running toward the trail.
Right.
But so I always make it a point, and I've tried to outline in the book, to always watch your surroundings. Always see the unique things in your surroundings. If you're not looking down and preventing yourself from falling on the trail,
right, yeah.
But seeing a unique rock or that tree over there with the red leaves, really cool. And notice these unique things along the way. And being an East Coaster, always looking for the trail marker. The AT, look for that white blaze.
You would be surprised how nerve-wracking it is to be going along and for 200, 300, 400 yards not seeing a white blaze.
Yes.
It's a very welcome thing to see, I tell you.
Yes,
surprisingly so.
As soon as I pass one, I'm looking for the next one. Because in the East Coast, when you have a much deeper or more thicker canopy, everything tends not to grow under it. And so mistaking the trail for non-trail or false trails, maybe three people in the last month went off in the same direction to pee, and you think that's the trail.
Yeah, done that as well.
Marks and everything else. Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, but just always never trust, like your instinct should be to never trust that this is the trail. Always scrutinize. Is this the trail? Is
always
this
question
the trail?
it. Yeah.
Where is that next blaze? And if I don't see it when I've passed the last blaze, then I'm going a little bit to the right of the trail, a little bit to the left of the trail, because there's going to be trees in the way. In your vision, and you're like, it's blocking the next blaze. So it's very erratic going by trail markers, because the local trail conference, they're just determining when that by themselves. There's no standardization of how far it should be from one another, and unfortunately, especially for the reflectors or the things that get nailed into the trees, people nefariously remove them.
Which is not helpful. Which is not helpful at all.
Yeah. Humans are very interesting animals.
So do you advise one navigation habit to stay safe? And if there's one you should think of, what would it be?
So at least I can only tell you my experience. I always go analog. I've got my electronic. I always download the All Trails map, but I use that as my plan B. And I always go analog first. I always have my map, and you can't always find a map for everywhere you go. But AT is probably 40,000 maps.
Yeah.
But
and I feel bad not carrying any of them. By the way, you're making me feel bad about it. Yeah.
Right. But I always, so the twists and the turns and the hairpins and all that stuff, I follow like it is like gospel. And so I have my map in usually my thigh pocket, and I'll pull it out. Any difference in the, a major difference in the trail. This one makes a left turn. All right. So I was here. I passed that lake, back then. And, all right. So left turn. Okay. So this is the left turn. And all right. So I'm here now. And I acknowledge that I made that left turn there. And then I'm going, and if I'm lost, I'm like, oh shit. All right. So the last I knew, I was at that left-hand turn. I went this way. All right. So what direction? I said, got my compass. What direction am I facing? And okay, so what direction will get me back to that left-hand turn? And then I just follow that direction.
And that does speak to what you said earlier on about paying attention to your surroundings while you're not looking at your feet, but paying attention to your surroundings and being aware of what you're seeing. And
right.
That's important. Well,
absolutely.
I think we've covered those areas I wanted to talk about. Firstly, where can people get your book? Is it at Amazon and all those good places?
Yeah, so everywhere online. So Amazon's usually where most people go, but Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, there's a lot of other online retailers. Okay. Even your local bookstore will have an online option. Usually with that book, they don't have it on the shelf or in stock, but they'll get it from one of the distributors.
And it's published under Falcon Guide, Surviving the Trail, 5 Essential Skills to Prepare Every Hiker for Adventure's Most Common Perils. And hopefully you remember this, Rob, you said you'd happily hand out a copy to one of our listeners if they could answer one of your questions. Have you got a question for them?
Okay. How about... preparation is very important to me and the focus of this book. How did you learn how to prepare?
Nice. So I can now judge which is the best answer then. Is that right? That's nice.
Right.
That's a very good one. That's not the answer is this, the answer is that. That'd be good. So how do you learn to prepare? Well, look, I really appreciate you chatting with me about this. In light of my upcoming hike, I know I'm doing some things wrong. I know I don't do water properly. I know I should do it a bit better than I do. And also, I'm going to have to give in and buy some paper maps of some sort to take with me that I can actually read and understand, and probably possibly even a compass. But I appreciate you coming on the show and going through it so comprehensively, and thank you for answering my dumb questions.
No. There's only dumb answers.
Okay, man. Well, take it easy. Thanks for doing this. Cheers.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Cheers. Bye. I tell you, those stats were a shock to me, as you could tell. And I think chatting with Rob gave me a fuller appreciation of the dangers we all face out in the wild. I'm really not good with the amount of water I drink on trail, so I know that I'll be focusing on it way more when I go in March. I know that last year there was an acute water shortage, especially in New England, so I'll have to be aware of that and make sure I take advantage of every opportunity to fill up on trail. I think a lot of what Rob said is common sense, yet he backs it up with data, anecdotes and research to present a compelling case. And what about the number of hikers getting lost not reducing despite far out? That was a bit of a shock to me as well. And his question for a copy of his book was, how did you learn how to prepare? It's quite a wide-ranging question, so as I'll be picking a winner, send your answer to me at steve@hikingradionetwork.com, and I'll let Rob know who the winner is, and he'll send you a copy of his book. As I said last week, going forward I'll be announcing new supporters of the podcast each week and not reading out our monthly donors, though please don't think I'm any less grateful to all of you who keep us going. This week, Deborah Brower gave a generous donation through Venmo, writing, "Thank you for your podcast," and thank you for your donation, Deborah. And we also got a new Buy Me a Coffee member this week when Mike B signed on. Thanks, Mike. Hope as we come into this 10th year of the show, especially if you've been a long-time listener, that you'll consider supporting the network of podcasts we provide. You can do that in a number of ways, but the easiest way is at buymeacoffee.com/Mighty Blue, where you can support us for as little as $3 a month to gain access to our Facebook group, Off Trail with Mighty Blue, a couple of bucks more to get access to early episodes of the show. Then for just $10 a month, you can join a Zoom call that I know I need to arrange in the coming days. Anyway, I hope you consider it. I'll always be grateful. Finally today, my latest accountability blog, where we introduce a new diet. Here it is. Hi everybody, it's another week, so another accountability blog. There hasn't been too much going on this week, what with Christmas and all the overeating, but I'm so pleased to be able to report that I stayed right on track with my training this week, even going for a long walk on Christmas Day, mainly because the gym was closed. As I mentioned last week, the time was getting away from me and I hadn't been to the gym that day, but I dragged my ass there after I'd put up last week's show, so that felt like a little win to me. My trainer Luis wasn't able to see me this week, so I've been on my own in the gym all week. I find that he helps motivate me to keep going between sessions, and I kind of missed him being there for that reason. Nevertheless, I continue to believe that every second down the gym will help me when I'm on trail in March, so I keep going all week. I specifically increased weights this week because I've allowed myself to be comfortable with my different exercises, and that shouldn't really be the case. I've been testing myself more each week, so some personal bests were broken again in terms of weight, but I certainly felt that extra weight on my legs. It's about a 4-mile walk home from the gym, so Dana and I head there in the morning. We both do our workouts, then she drives home while I walk all the way back home. It's through a developing neighbourhood, so it's quite exposed, and once the sun sets in here in Florida, it's definitely a sweaty walk towards the end. Something that Luis did provide this week was a meal plan for me. I've been struggling to get the protein I need for my weight workouts, so he came up with something that seemed to give me 2,300 calories a day over 4 meals with about 230 grams of protein, 230 grams of carbs and 48 grams of fat in total. But he didn't give me as much detail as I wanted, so I turned to ChatGPT, of course. In chat, I fed in what Luis had given me, then asked chat to come up with a meal plan with specific recipes and instructions, as well as a shopping list to allow for some interchangeability with the ingredients. It was truly amazing. And now I have a plan I'm starting on Monday that should help me lose some weight and meet those protein goals that I was struggling so much with. In fact, Dana said she'd like to try this as well, so I plugged her info into chat and it spewed out a joint shopping list, same meals but larger portions for me than Dana, of course, as she's literally half my size. We're going to do the weekly shop on Saturday or Sunday, then prep 2 of the daily main meals for the whole week. There are 10 meals we'll be making each and storing them in the fridge as we eat them in different combinations each day. Breakfast and the post-training snack will be the same each day, including oats, and you know how much I like that. By the time next week comes round, I should have been on this diet for about, 2.5 days, so I'll let you know how it's going. My weight is still definitely a problem, so this is an attempt to lose, 15 to 20 pounds before I go. I'm not sure how possible that is, but I know that every pound I can save will be a help. And as for gear, you've probably heard in the body of the show how I dropped the ball on my interview and purchase of the ZenBivy system. The good news is that Michael Glavin got back to me last night and we look like we're recording next week. Nemo are going to provide me with somebody as well, hopefully soon. Anyway, the combination of these two will likely be my sleep system out on trail, and I look forward to testing it out, along with my new Durston tent, of course, in the wilds of my backyard here in Florida. Funnily enough, last night would have been perfect as we woke up to 37-degree temperatures this morning, and that's the kind of temperature I want to check it out in, knowing full well that it will likely get even colder in the Smokies in April. One last thing about my gear. That Ventus hoodie I got recently from Outdoor Vitals is the bomb. As I say, it was bloody freezing this morning, so I put on my base layer, the Ventus, and my Enlighten Equipment Torrid Apex Puffy, which is actually an old one, but really great. I had to take the Torrid Apex off in about 10 minutes. And even after the sun was in the sky, the warmest it got was about, 40, 41 degrees, so it was still very cold. But the Ventus handled it perfectly. It looks quite thin, it's very light. It doesn't feel like it would offer much warmth, but it's a way of keeping you warm without overheating. Obviously, I'll be testing it out more, but I'm so pleased that I got it. As you know, I bought this myself, though they did give me a discount code, so I'm going to be giving you my true opinions on all my stuff, and I can't speak more highly of this hoodie. Thanks, Barry Hill, for turning me on to Outdoor Vitals. So that's where we are with gear and training. Once I dial in the sleep system, I'm going to fill my new pack and try it out for size. I may even put together a video about what's going in it to share on my Off Trail with Mighty Blue Facebook page. Cheers all. Quite excited about that new diet idea, especially as Dana will be doing it with me. I enjoy cooking anyway, so it won't be too much of a burden for me, and I'll be doing something to help with my training. After all, that can only be a benefit, can't it? I'll see you next week.